But again, folks can start getting situated at the door TCS panel here here in 2 minutes. So if folks can start sitting down, if we can kind of cut the chatter to a minimum, that would be great. All right, so we're going to get started with our next panel. Thank you all for being here again. So if folks can start taking their seats, that would be awesome. All righty. All right, so folks, if you can start taking your seats, that'd be great. We want to show the same respect we did to Michael to our next speaker. So. And then again, for lunch, if you haven't taken your ticket out of your name badge and placed it on your table, that will help our servers give the meal that you selected when you registered. So with that, I'm going to kick off our TCS AI panel. At this time, I would like to introduce our panel moderator, Mr. Abhinav Goyal with TCS, and joining Abhinav on stage is Durga Sameta, the Director, GSI Cloud GTM with NVIDIA, Nikuj Nirmal, Head of Engineering for Amazon, and Ram Iyer, Executive Vice President for PennyMac. So we can give all of them a round of applause for being here today. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And again, folks, if we can please take our seats to be respectful of our speakers, that would be very well appreciated.
Thank you, Kamal. Well, good morning, everyone. Great to see a great turnout today. Now, before we get into the I wanted to share one story with you. So, a couple of weeks back, I was talking to my wife and I said, hey, there is this amazing tool called Claude from Anthropic, and I'm amazed with it. I want to buy the subscription plan for it. It's like the max plan, the $100 per month plan. And she says, why? I said, oh, I can just write a prompt and it can create a complete business proposition for me. Okay, so does that mean you will make more money? I'm like, no, not really. So then what does it do? So I said, well, I'll save some time. So my wife says, okay, so does that mean that instead of working 16 hours a day, you'll be working 14 hours a day? I said, yeah, probably. So she says, okay. So then you get to do the groceries, you get to drop the kids, and you have to do taxes on time. I said, I'm not sure of that. She says, you know what? Then this conversation is over. I think all of us can relate to this, that while we have these fancy tools, I think adding them and attaching them to the business value, right, whether it is in our personal lives or in the boardrooms, articulation of that value is important, and driving that business growth, linking that to that is important. So, AI is no longer a technology conversation, it is a growth conversation. The leaders winning today are not the ones that are experimenting with AI, but the ones that are translating into measurable business outcomes. Companies are already seeing about 3.5 times return on a dollar invested in customer experience. There are about 41% of the organizations say that AI is now competitive differentiation in customer experience. Trendsetters are saying that AI is seeing 33% higher acquisition and 22% higher retention. But in spite of all of this, only a minority have truly scaled AI at enterprise level. And that's how it was developed. So with that, let me introduce our distinguished panel today. We have three leaders who are sharing AI from very different but highly complementary perspectives. Firstly, we have Durga Samita. Director GSI, Cloud GTM and NVIDIA at the forefront of enabling AI at scale through advanced computing and ecosystem innovation. Durga leads global system integration, cloud strategy and go-to-market at NVIDIA, driving enterprise adoption of the NVIDIA AI stack across major cloud platforms. With roots as a software developer, he brings rare depth, spanning technical expertise, product management, and enterprise to build strategic partnerships that scale AI and cloud solutions. Next, we have Nikunj Nirmal, Head of Engineering International Expansion at Amazon, not AWS. Nikunj leads Amazon's expansion into new global markets, building AI and GenAI solutions that drive customer experience and operational excellence at scale. And finally, we have Ramnath Iyer, EVP and CTO Engineering at TECHCONNEX, driving enterprise transformation with AI in a highly regulated, high-stakes environment. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. So, we will start with a few perspectives from each of our panelists and how they are seeing AI evolve across their organization and industries. And from there, we will move into moderated discussion where we will dive into some of the key themes around scaling AI, driving measurable outcomes, and what it really takes to operationalize it. So with that, my first question. So with that, my first question is for Durga. Durga, we are seeing a strong ROI signals. Some organizations reporting 3.5 times return on AI investments, yet scaling remains uneven. From your vantage point at NVIDIA, what distinguishes companies that are actually turning AI into measurable business outcomes versus those that are stuck in pilots? What does the infrastructure foundation need to look like?
Awesome. Thank you. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity and thank you all for your attention. So it's a great question. Right? So what we see is that, like when you see lots of customers doing pilots, they're not failing because AI is failing. That's not the reason. Right? The reason why pilots are not going into production or scaling is because we see a pattern, right? Like successful versus unsuccessful. Like the ones who are successful are the ones who basically focus on this three foundation kind of like three, kind of in the framework of 3 layers, right? One is you have a foundation of your AI, right? Second is your execution. Third one is the outcomes you want to drive. If you're not clear on what outcome you want to drive, it doesn't matter how strong your foundation is and you build your own AI factory or you rent an AI factory from AWS, it doesn't really matter, right? So starting with very strong foundation, which is the infrastructure, the AI infrastructure that is reusable for not just one project, but also for multiple projects and scale across cross-function, right? So you want to have scalable different layers from infrastructure, the GPUs, the CPUs, and data, and so on. The second aspect of this is the execution. And I think a lot of people get confused on execution. Execution has 3 things. One is not just the board level support or the CXO support. You need to have support across all functions. Like you need, like when you're doing a project, you want to have folks from operations, legal, finance, customer success, all these folks to be in the project. You don't want to do a pilot with a bunch of data scientists are built for scalable, and then also create instrumentation to measure what success looks like, how to measure success. And that success means outcomes. What outcomes you want to drive? You want to increase the customer retention or reduce wastage in your supply chain, or it could be a variety of outcomes. But be very clear what that outcome is and get the executive support and cross-functional support and make sure change management is ready, and then figure out like what model to use, what infrastructure to use, what kind of AI factory you want to build for yourself or rent something and so on, right? That's what we see as like a successful from pilot to production and so on.
Thank you, Durga. Talking of execution, so Ramnath, you have lived this from inside of TECHCONNEX. When you are embedding generative and agentic AI into enterprise operations, how do you define done? What is the metric that tells you that a pilot has truly scaled?
Thank you everyone, first Abhinav for the opportunity. So primarily what I would like to mention here is, it's not about implementing AI, and to answer your question, scale is not experimentation. Scale is what is the business outcome. It's not about how, if we have received success in one of the area, that doesn't mean scale. How do I get the entire enterprise aligned? So in terms of metrics, it'll be productivity. How am I delivering faster in terms of customer success, customer retention? And then also from a business perspective, how am I able to basically, get the benefit in terms of revenue generation, right? These are critical factors that has to be measured. And if we see that you remove AI, and if your operating model is broken, you have scaled. So the key, like in our case, in terms of delivering for our software development, what we have primarily done is we have implemented agentic flows towards delivery, and it started off, as everybody else, in terms of how to leverage it, and then building the organization, defining the process flows, as Dr. was mentioning. It is that execute sponsorship, mandating from the start, right? And then making sure every part of the enterprise is aligned towards the goal of delivery, that hey, you have to scale to deliver and be successful. Otherwise, you're not going to be in this market, right? Everybody else is being successful. If we don't adopt the change, we are not going to be there. So the change management is critical. Training the employees, making them aware that you're not going to be replaced. You're only going to be augmented to deliver faster, and that's the key. Those are the things when are achieved, then you automatically start scaling. And measuring those metrics is what defines the scale, and not AI pilots that we all keep talking about. And that's the key.
Thank you. Nikul, so what does this look like at a scale in real-world deployments? What is your view?
First of all, thank you for having me over here. It's a great opportunity and appreciate everybody joining us. And I'll start with one caveat. Whatever I share over here is my personal view, nothing to do with Amazon. But the great points made by Rama and Durga, a plus one to what has been said. In terms of when it is deployed at scale, what does it look like? It is boring. If it is not visible, it's behind the scenes, it just works. You're not talking about it. AI project is not an exciting project, but it's embedded within your workflow. It's accepted at scale by everybody in the organization. It's not the leadership really pushing down that you need to use AI, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's not about running after the latest models or the latest infrastructure, the tools. It's more about changing the way you're working and accepting the new way of working. I think in terms of different players that Durga talked about, yes, all of them is important, but having the modularization is as well important. So if you plan it to do coding, if you plan it to fail, and then you accept that failure, then you're successfully deployed at scale. And that's what a success would look like for an organization, which would eventually translate to the success in terms of the business outcomes and measuring the ROIs. It definitely requires the right level of measurements. A feedback loop is extremely important as well to measure those outcomes. It's not a quarterly report, it's an operational piece in terms of feedback. Once you have all of these on a day-to-day operations basis, I think an organization is successfully implemented AI.
So while we are with you, where do you see human judgment remaining non-negotiable in the customer experience loop, even as AI automates more of the life cycle?
Great question. So, AI works very well when it has to make decisions, and it makes the decisions confidently. It fails the customers when the customer needs something the most, and in that moment of truth, if it does not give the right answer, that is when it fails the customer. So building that trust is important, and that is where the human in the loop comes into play. You want to understand in your workflow what are those critical points where the customers really need to have the right answer. Some of it is okay, you know, if I just think about, hey, I'm just looking for my status of the order. Maybe it is wrong, maybe it's not updated, it's not going to be that difficult. But when a customer is trying to do a return, when the customer is trying to figure out, I want to get an answer to where my refund is, why isn't it there when it was told it would be there, I think those are trust clusters. When an AI chatbot, for example, recommends a product which is irrelevant, losing that context could be wrong. And then again, if I just look at an online experience standpoint as well, there are sensitive products that you cannot sell in certain countries. If you even display an image of that product, it's going to be a compliance issue, right? And it could also be a big PR risk. So these are the places where you definitely want to make sure that you have a human in the loop. And to do that, your systems have to know what are guardrails. So defining those guardrails in the knowledge bases right from the very beginning is important. Again, as I said earlier, planning for failure is important, planning for success. If you have nailed down the failure correctly and you earn the trust from the customers.
Sure, thank you. So maybe Ramna, how do you operationalize that in a regulated and high stakes environments like financial services?
So, as you know, financial services industry is highly regulated. So, if I just adopt, there are two aspects to it. It is the right balance, right? One side is we hear all these stories, oh my God, my database has been breached, and then financial institutions completely block it, right? That's one side. But the other side is, hey, I really want to adopt this, I want to take it, but how do I put the right guardrails, right? Especially in the mortgage industry where customer trust is very important, right? The transparency, putting the right guardrails, making sure there is no bias, there is transparency, there is visibility there. That's the key, right? Customer is not looking at AI. He is looking at the fair outcomes. What am I getting out of it is what he's doing. He doesn't care whether it's AI, whether it's faster, is it trustworthy? Am I being, is there a bias? Am I getting the fair customer? And that's where your customer retention comes in play. Therefore, making sure that you have AI response, compliance, bias, trust, transparency be taken into consideration as part of the guardrails, so we can make sure that we can.
Fair enough. So, Durga, what role does structure and model capability play in enabling this end-to-end intelligence through what Jensen likes to call 5-layer cake?
Yeah, so the way we define AI is it's a 5-layer cake, right? And it's very sweet. And so it starts at the energy layer, right? Because if you think of tokens, what electrons come in, tokens come out, right? Without the energy, there's no token generation. So the base layer is your energy layer. It has to be consistent, it has to be something that you can rely on. On top of that, you have the chips, right? Which is whether it's accelerated computing with GPUs, or it can be a CPU, it can be data processing, some kind of a networking chip, any of those chips. And our chips are available on Amazon, on our. On top of that, then you have the infrastructure that has to be the scalable infrastructure that you can rely on. Like AWS gives you that scale that can go from a local region all the way to entire global, right? Or any other CSP as a matter of fact. You can also build your own AI factory infrastructure, right? So that's your infrastructure. So energy, chips, infrastructure. And then on top of that is the models. Then you have front-end models, like the Claude that I heard, right? The OpenAI GPTs and Gemini, and maybe 2 or 3 million models, open models that are available in Hugging Face, right? So the innovation is really, really fast. So that's a model, right? And then on top of that is the application layer. The application of the AI is where the real outcomes and the real economy comes in play. You need to have efficiency across all layers for your AI to work really, really well and into production. Sometimes you may want to build your own AI factories, and the important thing I think you were saying about the context. For context is king when it comes to agentic solutions. You don't want your context to be on-prem and you want to build agents in the cloud, or vice versa. It doesn't make sense. So you always have context, proximity, and data gravity is extremely important when you're building agents. So we work with the ecosystem across all layers, right? Whether it's energy, or we work with Anthropic, or we work with OpenAI and others when it comes to model layer and so on, right? And then CPUs, we launched Vera CPU, which is the latest CPU that we launched, and we hand delivered it to Anthropic, OpenAI, and SpaceX. And that's going to be a massive opportunity. And that is purpose-built for agentic workloads. Purpose-built for agentic workloads, because agents can do tasks, they can work on your behalf, and then you can build skills to support those agents and then scale through that. So these 5 layers of the cake is where the way we look at AI, right? Because then wrapping everything together with our partners like TCS and others, bringing the industry knowledge, leveraging the full stack, and delivering the outcomes, that is a beautiful thing.
Thank you for that. Now, talking about partners, from an ecosystem standpoint, what separates AI leaders from others?
So I think if you think of the 5 layers that I talked about, right? When in infrastructure, we co-design with our at every layer. Like infrastructure, we work with our AWS and other CSPs. When models talk about Anthropic and so on. And then think of application layer. We work with ISVs like SAP, ServiceNow, CrowdStrike, Palantir, and then we accelerate and integrate their ISV solutions with our technologies that run on cloud, right? So ecosystem is our strength, and we are successful when ecosystem is successful. That's the way you should also think of. You don't want to get everything by yourself. You want to think of how can you leverage the ecosystem that has already solved the problem and then use that for your advantage. Use a skill that has already been developed, use that skill for an agentic workflow, and then build on top of it. So ecosystem is super critical, and without the ecosystem, today we would not be sitting here.
Thank you. Makes sense. So Nikul, how do you architect for a scale from day one instead of retrofitting later?
Yeah, I think there's 2 levels or 2 types of AI being deployed today. One is, which is more of a proof of concept. There is a lot of hype. Every team is trying to build something and get to a stage where they're able to get approvals from the leadership, get approval from the project, get funding, whatever it is. But when you do that, you're not thinking about productionization. You're not thinking about what the feedback loop would be, what the observability, what the monitoring would be, right? And when we talk about implementing at scale, this is where the factor that you asked for comes into play. So modularization is extremely important. And this goes back to the fundamentals of software engineering in many ways, right? We have been modularizing in a monolithic way. Also, there were always 3 layers. Then came then came the microservices. And then now we're talking about AI. At each piece, modularization is extremely important. There could be a model which is doing amazing in a certain scenario today. It may not be the same. There is a change in the behavior from the customer data. There is a drift in the data that happens. And you want to now look at something else that performs better for that particular behavior. So being able to replace the individual components and being able to then also scale those components, because when you make it replaceable, you're also creating it in a way where if you want to horizontally scale it, you are able to horizontally scale it as well. So don't tie everything together. If your entire pipeline has to be revamped for a change, that's not the right structure. Having each component in terms of infrastructure, as well as in terms of all your software components, agents, the models that drive intelligence behind the agents should have a lot of flexibility in that. If you do this all right, in the right sequence, and then design for the feedback loop as well. Because designing for the feedback loop actually makes sure that what you develop today is relevant 6 months, 1 year from the down the line as well. The last piece I would say is the cost. So again, that's where modularization comes in. Maybe using a model all the time, but sometimes you need to make it a local model. So you're not paying. There could be some open source models that could be using as well, and this would continue to ecosystem is evolving so fast. So if you're able to do something today with a paid model, you could have an open source model that you can use for the part of it. So don't think of that you need to use one model for everything. You need to use one ecosystem for everything. If you build the components, you can continue to experiment, evolve. And I would highly encourage everybody to continue to experiment and evolve as well, if nothing else than for reducing the cost, because that's what business is going to care most about.
Sure. So let's talk about trust, governance, and human judgment. Okay. So as AI becomes embedded into customer journeys, how do you balance automation with trust, transparency, and human judgment? Let's start with you, Rana.
So primarily, AI should be used more as augmentation, not for replacement. High trust organizations will use AI for that and place primarily the humans in the higher decision-making chain. That's where it helps, because at every stage, when you look at it, those organizations which focus on trust, especially in the fintech where I'm from, that becomes a very critical component of trust, right? So from that perspective, it's important that we take that into consideration and make sure that what we are developing has those guardrails built in, and making sure that the governance, because as you heard this morning, that Trump government is putting the new rules for AI guardrails. So that is something we have to leverage and see how we are aligning to that. Similarly, state government have their laws, right? Those are built in as part of the applications that we are building. So from an operations as well as from software development and across the board of the enterprise, we need to make sure they are aligned to do that delivery from a customer perspective. That's the key here.
Sure. Nikunj, you want to add anything?
I think you covered it very well. Only thing I would add is that when it comes to the customer trust, don't leave it to chance, don't leave it to hope. Plan for it, plan for the failure. I would repeat that 1,000 times, plan for failures. Because your customer trust, you earn it in pennies and you spend it in dollars. Never take it for granted.
Yeah, so I think from my point of view, automation gives you that speed, right? And then transparency, as you pointed out, gives you the trust. And that human judgment is the accountability. If you have, let's say, an IMAC, you have a loan officer, working on some mortgage application. Let's say the agentic solution came out like it says approved. Well, the loan officer says like, well, what's the context? How did you approve it? What really went in there, right? But if you make it transparent, then I think the loan officer can trust that system and then say, yeah, this makes sense, right? If the context is not there, they can add that context and make it better. Right? So think from a context, super important, right? Automation gives you the speed, transparency gives you the trust, right? And then of course the human judgment, super important, gives you the accountability for you to get things done.
Cool. So for this next round, let's do one thing. One short answer for this question from each of you. If someone in this room is heading back to their team and wants to take one concrete step towards AI, real growth driver, not a demo, what would you tell them to do first?
Identify which is your biggest problematic area in terms of where you're losing, spending a lot in terms of your money, the operational cost is high. That's the area, identify that, pick that, see how you can solve that problem. Once you have that, now start looking in scale. Rather than across the board dysfunctional AI pilots, make a concerted effort to go in one direction. It should not be, I'm using AI for the sake of AI, but how is AI going to help me, meet the business challenges and help move faster?
So, let's do what you said. I would add one part to that, high velocity. So look at the decisions that are made in the organization that nobody's talking about. If you want to differentiate yourselves and make a real impact, figure out a decision in a workflow which is made 100 times a day, 1,000 times a day, right? go after it, that will create a high value impact, and that will result into high velocity judgment, and that will drive the business outcomes much faster. And of course, look at the ROI as well. So that's where what Ramnath says is very relevant. It doesn't have to be a decision which is inconsequential as well. But if you look very closely, I'm 100% sure each one of us can find things which nobody's talking about, and that's going to be your goal.
So, I plus one to what both of them said. I think ROI, I can find the way I would explain is like what I get hung up on a model. They say, oh, like, I'm using Gemini model. Well, Gemini will solve everything. It's not the case. That's not how it works. Right? Don't get hung up on a specific model because model accuracy, performances change over time. You know, one day it's better, tomorrow maybe something happens. So the way is when you go back, you should think of like how the AI orchestration layer you should build, and then you should think of like you can, for really hard reasoning problems, you can use a frontier model. But if you wanted to get something done on a more small language model, or you want more control and flexibility, use let's say like NVIDIA Nemotron or some kind of open model, right? Having the combination, as what Nikhil mentioned, will help cut down the cost. That's super important, and that will future-proof yourself because you have an orchestration layer that can help you to really kind of move. Maybe one day you're using Gemini, tomorrow you want to move to cloud. That's great. But once you have that orchestration layer, that will help you to take these kind of decisions. But you only stuck with one model and then you want to solve every problem, you're basically stuck.
Agreed. Well, I think we have some time for maybe one or two audience questions. So if there's anybody who would like to ask any question to this panel, please feel free. Can somebody help her with the mic, please? Or you want to come forward? Or maybe we can read the mic. Well, that's a good strategy, Nikunj. You don't have to answer it now.
Hi, thank you so much for taking your time to answer some questions for us. As you can tell, I'm a little bit on the younger side, and so I'm still learning about AI and how to, get my toes dipped into it. So my question for you is, even here, right, there's people who are still learning. What would you say is the best way to kind of start using it to kind of, help with our daily lives, but also, as you talked about a little bit, like introducing in our business?
So, have you used a screwdriver recently? Have you not used? Well, usually you will build a cabinet, like an IKEA cabinet, and there will be like 1,000 parts and like 10,000 screws. You can build an IKEA cabinet with a screwdriver. It will take a long time and your hand hurts, okay? But what if I gave you an electric, like cordless, screwdriver that can read the manual and then that can actually apply the pressure required for a certain part and get things done. That's what AI does. So you need to embrace AI as another tool or a technology, and then you should get comfortable using it, and it should become like a second nature. And because you should not think of like, oh, AI means I'm cheating. That's not how it is, right? I mean, using an electric screwdriver doesn't mean you're cheating, right? So just you should embrace it fully in your. Like I love baking. I'm a baker, and at home sometimes if I don't have ingredients, if I do a Google search, I get kind of retrieved recipes. But if I go to ChatGPT and put what I have at home, it generates a recipe, and they turn out to be really good. So use it.
Yeah, if I may just add that it reminds me of my days, at the school. We used to hate these open book exams. And because the exam just got harder.
I think one thing I'll add is, for the first time we have a technology which you don't need to learn. it will teach you by itself. Just ask AI, how do I do what I need to do? Or it will do it on your behalf as well. So just don't be scared, just dive into it. And I have been experimenting a lot on a lot of other different things which I have not done in recent past. And it's just like, I don't know how to integrate my Outlook with this new tool. I just asked the tool, can you do this? Like, yeah, I can integrate it. I asked it, like, I wanted to download a few things on SharePoint. And I wasn't sure if the desktop quick would do that or not. So first of all, I asked, can you do this? Like, yeah. Okay, this is the one, downloaded recursively, got into it. I didn't use the word recursively to do that. Then it kept asking me for proof. We just got into it, right? So just play with it, it will come out.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
A few more questions.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you all for sharing the insights. More along the lines of what was asked before. First and foremost, I'm super thrilled to see NVIDIA and all the top companies that are here. But what are we doing locally? Like the level of lack of awareness. What we have people either scared of participation, so on and so forth. I know Jensen is big time proponent of Nemo Cloud, Open Cloud. What can we do to actually drive that level of engagement where everybody is trying to build their agents like their electric screwdrivers anomaly, right? And as Michael started earlier, unfortunately, the generation that went to the school, they are probably the most ill-equipped to participate. So do that. What are you in your own respective capability to doing those more of the open cloud workshops or cloud workshops so that everybody can participate and benefit from it?
So I think, the technology is evolving so fast. We started with the ChatGPT and DeepSeek, and now we're talking about open cloud. And that's one of the fastest technologies that have grown. And if you really want to be on top of things, here's how we do it at NVIDIA, and I'll share. Nobody's going to remember every technology that's out there. Rely on Cloud Code, Codex, or any of these tools. And basically, we ask, I have a meeting coming up with a certain customer, right? And here are the problems and pain points that they're trying to solve. And then you basically put the context, what is the time, like context, location, all sorts of things that you put in there, and then we get that stuff back. That's how we learn. Like we don't just go walk into a meeting and just say oh yeah, let's see what your problem is. We do prepare. That's one thing. Second thing is you mentioned about the open cloud. Open cloud right now is like a harness that will help you to build skills, reusable skills for agents to run autonomously. And most of this knowledge is public. So the best way you can learn is use an AI tool like a Claude or something like that to learn more about it, and then ask literally to create I want a training plan for my team, and then really step by step it creates that, right? So Jensen also looks at we have access to Gemini, we have access to all of the tools, and I hope you all access as well, and just use them. That will help you tremendously more than anyone else.
Also to add to that, right, within your organization, there are different groups, right? It's not one fit for all kind of training, right? You need to identify which groups need what type of training. But it's important to get them all trained. But how, like example, if they are engineers, they need a different type of training to improve efficiency or leverage AI. But for an operations and finance guy, it's a very different type of training. Similarly, for a product person, it's a different type of training. So giving them the right tool and making them aware is what is going to enable an organization to move fast. That is the key to make sure that the training is done at the right level for the right set of people so they can leverage it. Because if I give it to a finance guy and teach him about Cursor and how to build, engineering tools, that's not going to be successful, right? So catering to that is the key.
Post-training, the adoption is most important. So share the stories. I think inspire each other. That's the best way to make sure that people adopt it post-training as well and drive real outcomes.
Well, I think Kamal is standing behind me and saying that that's all time we have for today for the panel here, but the panel is here and you are free to ask and engage in a conversation with them after this. But before I wrap up, any last comments or points that you would want to make?
I'll close with what I started. Make AI boring.
Don't start with an AI in search of a problem. Yeah, so do that.
Cool.
Identify your biggest area of bottleneck today, right? And see how you can solve it. That's the key.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. That was a fantastic discussion. And yeah, we'll look forward to having the dialogue further on the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhinav. That was a great set of questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Abhinav and TCS, our underwriter sponsors for this TECHCONNEX. Thank you again for all your support for TCS. Durga through NVIDIA, Nikunj through Amazon, and Ram through PennyMac. Thank you guys for your insights. As you guys are getting your food, I want to call up some of our tech board members to just do a quick pick with our panelists. So Dakar, Vic, Satish, and Gaurav, y'all can just come up on stage where we can take a quick pick and show a token of the change of gratitude. So thank you again, gentlemen. I don't think for your lunch, again, please put your ticket at the back of your badge on your table. That way our servers can give you the proper food. Thank you all.
Who's behind the airlines that connect business partners and recommend generations of